Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Fonseca, and thank you for joining me in this short overview of the development of social emotional skills within the teaching profession. We're going to explore some of the reasons why developing social emotional skills is a fundamental, critical part of our teaching training and preparing ourselves to facing the challenges out there. And we're going to also begin to think of the development of a self-care plan that can help us or guide us in this search for social emotional well-being. What is social emotional learning, or what are skills? What are the skills that we're talking about? What are we talking about here? We're looking at a set of competencies that teachers need in order to manage the stress that is a byproduct of our classrooms, our environment, school environments. And we're also looking at what are the skills and mindsets that we need to develop to effectively embody a sense of well-being, a sense of social emotional health that can be then transferred to our students. Not only benefits us, but it's also something that we can take into our classrooms and help through modeling, help our students develop their own social emotional skills. So one thing to keep in mind is that these are skills that are hopefully integrated into everything that we do. It's something that becomes habitual part of our daily routines, our daily practices. And with that in mind, we're going to look into the creation of a self-care plan. Okay? When we go into a classroom, we think about it, we're entering the world of our students. They're bringing their worlds into our classrooms. They bring their hopes and aspirations and excitement of learning, as well as maybe some of the issues that are facing our youth, our communities, families. So all of that is coming into the classroom, recreating, creating a microcosm of their own worlds outside the classrooms, and we're stepping into that. And so we're part of that now. We're inhabiting our students' world. Some of the goals that we have in social emotional development for teachers, I like to begin thinking that awareness, just becoming aware that this is a critical need, is the single biggest step in this process. Prioritizing, becoming aware that this is something that is really critical to my well-being and to my success as a teacher. So we begin by prioritizing and noticing that if we don't prioritize self-care, many of the other demands that we'll be facing in out there in the schools will become, if we're not prioritizing self-care, we have so many demands placed on us as teachers that self-care becomes an afterthought, something that may not even get any attention, right? Besides developing awareness, we begin to recognize, which goes with awareness, our need to be okay, to be healthy. And also, we begin to think about small steps that if we repeat, if they become our daily practices, become more and more automatic. We begin to incorporate them into our daily routines to the point where this is what we do. At the beginning, it might take more planning, more thinking, more purposeful application of the skills. But over time, as we develop the habits, they become permanent. Now, why social emotional care and development in the teaching profession? Once again, we are in a emotionally demanding profession. We're around students who bring their own issues to our classrooms, their personal problems, their family, social issues that affect their behavior, and we are in constant interaction with them. So in some ways, we begin to absorb some of those issues, and if we're not careful, they can then take a toll on us. Since one of the primary responsibilities of a teacher is to care and support, I would say that is the primary responsibility of caring and supporting our students, because they're going to look at you for help and support. Caring for them really demands that we care of ourselves for ourselves first. We need to really be very conscious of our own self-care, because we have to be healthy in order to be there for them. We also know that there's a very high attrition rate for teachers, that in some estimates we look at maybe 40% of new teachers leaving the profession within the first 5 years. The numbers can vary according to the area and the program, but it's very high. And when we think about the amount of effort and financial resources and energy and time that is required for you to become a teacher, and to abandon that a few years after, it gives us an indication of how critical it is that we develop the resiliency to not only survive the first few years, but also to thrive and enjoy our wonderful profession. So another reason for the development of self-help, social emotional skills, is that you owe it to yourself. Because simply feeling well and thriving is something that you owe to yourself. You should do for yourself. And sure, as we do that, we are learning how to manage stress and reducing the burnout that leads to teachers leaving the profession. More reasons for thinking and beginning to take steps into this plan is that as we develop our own skills, we are modeling them for our students. I like to think that a happy, well-balanced, healthy teacher has the ability to replicate that in the classroom, right? So if you can bring that into your classroom. However, the opposite is very difficult. If your well-being is affected by stressors, by frustrations, by the pressures that you get out there, if that's taking a toll on you, it'll be very difficult to create a healthier classroom environment, because you're rolling in your own feelings into the classroom as they bring their own feelings, the students. Another reason that we need to prioritize and plan for our self-care is that most school systems really fall short providing the support that teachers need. There isn't really, for the most part, there are exceptions to any of these situations, but for the most part, if you go to staff meeting, the concentration is on kind of production, test scores, or curriculum training, or other factors that are quantifiable in the school system. But teacher well-being and support at best, it becomes an afterthought, if it ever happens. So our focus is, the system is not focusing on that. So we are exposed, now we're exposed to the stresses that students are bringing into a classroom, and we are part of that microcosm of society that our classroom reflect. So how are we preparing ourselves pretty much on our own to face that? And one final why, you need, repeating again, you need to take care of yourself before you can really be there for other people. You prioritize your own well-being, and then basically automatically that will transfer to your students and the other people that you interact with. At this point, maybe we can pause for a brief moment to kind of process this and think about the different types of motivators. What motivates me to engage in my own self, the development of my own self resiliency or self-help skills, the social emotional skills. And I don't know, but for some of you, it could be motivator could be you want to cultivate stronger relationships with your students or other staff members, and social emotional skills will really help you with that. For some of you, it could be also that you want to model to your students, communicate to them through your own behaviors, through your own reactions, responses to events, what is an appropriate or what are healthy coping mechanisms to function in a school system and in life in general. And another reason maybe you can think of is, or motivator you can think of is, learning to manage your own stress and reducing the burnout that we talked about. So maybe you want to think about which is your biggest motivator, or you can think of any other motivators that are not included here. You can have your own reasons for engaging in a self-care plan, and think about which is your strongest motivation and why. So then we begin to now think of what goes into a self-care plan. And we know that without complicating things too much, sometimes the easiest, the best answers are the simplest. Actually, usually that is true. The answers that we're seeking are right there in front of us, and they're not that complicated. So the basic components beginning to think about our self-care include, taking care of our diet, our sleeping habits, our physical activity. This is pretty obvious, nothing that you haven't heard before, but beginning to take small steps that fit your own personality, your own lifestyle, who that are not forced or too forced on you. Beginning to take those small steps with a lot of patience and kindness towards yourself, in case you're not as consistent as you want it to be. But being kind the way you approach this is really critical. Incorporating them in your daily plan, daily routines is really helpful. How do we do that? Well, writing it down is really, really critical. Putting down reminders on your planners or reminder on the Google schedule calendar, setting up alarms that reminds you I should, take a walk. How's my eating today? Am I going to bed at a reasonable time, resting enough? But placing reminders on your daily planning schedules so that you can check once that you have done that or not. But it's just a reminder. Some of the other components, and probably the single most important piece of this is awareness. Just becoming more aware that prioritizing your self-care is fundamental to your own development as a teacher, to your well-being. It should not be a second thought or an afterthought. Once you become aware, the process then is easier because you're aware of it. Another thing to think about is that there's stress. Stress response is just a normal, valid response to situations in our lives, and that understanding our own stress responses. How do we respond to stress? What are the mechanics of that response? Beginning to think about that and how we internally, if we identified our own internal processes, our own thinking about a situation, how that internal process of an event can either keep stress level to a reasonable degree, what it is, the reality of our situation, but our thinking can also increase it, compound whatever stressors we're facing. Stress is real, is there. Our response to stress can either keep the stress same, what it is. You can even lower it. And actually, you can lower it for sure. Or what we do often is we go to the next level in feeling stressed out because of we're adding to that through our own reactions. And when we talk about our reactions to stress, we're beginning to then notice, identify our thinking. What type of thoughts are you more likely to repeat when you're, to repeat? And once you begin to monitor those thoughts, you begin to notice that negative thoughts are more prevalent than positive thoughts. For example, if you went to a classroom, you had a wonderful day, your lesson plan worked well, students were behaving, maybe some of them were very kind to you and made a comment that made you feel appreciated, and you, at the end of the day or the period, you evaluated their learning and they're doing okay, so you feel really good about that, right? It's a sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment. But if we pay attention to our most common response to a positive event such as that one, is that we retain it in our memories, in our awareness for a brief amount of time, and then it drops off, disappears. We go to the next thing. So a positive emotion, positive outcome is held for the most part briefly. However, let's say then you go back to the classroom the next day or a week later, and now it's the opposite. Perhaps a student was behaving in a way that you needed to address, and you did, and now you're thinking, well, I didn't handle that well. I didn't do. I mean, I'm not. I should have handled it a different way. Or you you presented your lesson, and there were problems with maybe communicating it or students understanding it. You check the outcomes, and you're not pleased with the results. Well, that second experience is probably going to linger longer, much longer in your mind, in your thinking, than the first one, because there are many reasons for that. But basically, that is the way that we are built, that our brains are built. We hold on to negative events, and we repeat them in our thinking much more than we do with positive outcomes. So something to think about as you become aware. What am I retaining? What am I replaying when those thoughts appear? Okay, it is what we call default thinking, and default, when you're not aware or when you're just letting your thinking run on its own, the default will almost always be towards the negative, critical, judgmental type of thinking, and away from the other, the positive, the thinking that makes you feel good about what you do. So be aware of that. Monitor, pay attention to your type of thinking that you are repeating. And one tip here is that if you tend to be, like many of us are, let's say, we want to be perfect, we want everything to play out 100% well, and sometimes we get to 95%, but then we concentrate on the 5% that didn't go as planned. You might want to label that in your mind, in your thoughts. You go, well, you can call it the perfectionist. Oh, here's the perfectionist. Naming it will begin to help reducing the effect of your default or negative thinking. Okay. Looking at further components of self-care, so far we have talked about our responses to events, how we tend to concentrate mostly on the negative outcomes and repeat that in our minds, and away from the positive, right? So those are internal processes that we can become more aware of. But besides that, there are also factors in our work environment that if we manage well, they can really help increase our sense of well-being and satisfaction. And one of them is setting boundaries to what we do. Especially when you're a new teacher, you have a lot on your plate. You are learning as you go. You are facing new situations, new students' behaviors, demands, administrative pressures, maybe colleagues, collaborating with colleagues is challenging as well. So you have all these exterior demands on you. And one of the things that I encourage you to keep an eye on is the setting of boundaries. And as new teachers, we tend to we want to get involved in all those things, those projects that can make a difference for the school, for our students. Be careful with overextending yourselves, taking on voluntarily taking on more responsibilities than you can manage. So what are your limits? How far should you extend yourself volunteering for projects and for school activities, and just watch your capacity to manage all of that, because typically we commit ourselves to being part of a team or a collaboration, and we underestimate the amount of time and effort and even frustration that would entitle. So keep an eye on that, overextending. And another component of self-care that we should be thinking about is how do we connect with those people that are good to us in terms of their optimism, their positivity, their focus on results and things that are going well. Who are you surrounding yourself with in the school setting? Who are you having lunch with? Who are you spending? Sorry, my alarm is going off now. There you go. So keep an eye on how you spend your time within the school day, and who are the sources, the connections that you're making, and what are they contributing to your well-being. Okay. What is the focus of conversations in a school during a lunch hour or during breaks? Are you participating in mostly positive conversations, things that are optimistic and kind of joyful talks, or not? And then decide, how do you want to spend your time, your time with colleagues, just keep an eye on that. Now, one thing that will help you is remembering that as a new teacher, even if you're not a new teacher, you're still a work in progress. You're learning as you go, and you will make mistakes. There will be things that you will think are not you're not doing as well as you wanted to do. Be patient with yourself. You're a work in progress. You're learning. It's a process. It's a long process. It's a never-ending process, in fact. So being kind and forgiving to yourself is a really big part of a self-care awareness plan, development of social emotional skills. And then to summarize, very simple again, awareness, prioritizing that my self-care is critical to my success as a teacher. That is the biggest single most important step. Planning, having a plan, and then taking small steps to increase, to create your plan and to begin to implement it. I have left here a few resources. A lot of this information is coming out of a great website called transformingeducation.org. Take time, look at it, and you will gain a lot more information on how to implement a self-care plan and develop your social emotional skills. And then there are other links here that will help you as well. Thank you for your time. I encourage you to begin taking steps today, reflecting on where you are and taking very small steps that lead you into a higher level of resiliency and well-being, and so that you can be available not only to yourself but to the students that need you. Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.